Andrei Terbea, I probably mispronounced that, but he's a commentary YouTuber that I respect quite a bit, but I find his content to be not as entertaining as other commentary YouTubers. One video in particular that I have a problem with is one that was made over a month ago, I think, so it's kind of old, and it's a video called The Wasted Potential of Leafy. So in this video, Andrei pretty much says that he thinks that the Leafy ban was justified, but I think the reasons he gives for why it's justified aren't very valid, so I'm gonna try my best to, what's het woord ook weer? Tell you why I don't think they're very valid. English is hard, don't judge. So I'm gonna skip the intro because the only thing it's really doing is setting up the video, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. So I'm skipping immediately to chapter 1.
I feel like most of the time creators are justified in complaining about YouTube's actions, but it's never quite as simple as YouTube being the almighty god ignoring the voices of the people who power their platform and smiting down random accounts just for shites and giggles. YouTube's decision making is highly dependent on two external factors. With one hand, they're trying to keep advertisers happy, without which the platform could not possibly sustain itself, and with the other, YouTube tries to avoid regulation from lawmakers who will not rest until they put constraints on these huge social platforms they don't even fully understand.
Yeah, all of that is true, and I think that if YouTube decides that they need to ban some more controversial or edgy channels, or at least warn them and tell them to be less controversial or edgy, then they should probably do that, yeah. But I don't think that Leafy, especially with his newer content, broke any YouTube guidelines at all, really. And I would also like to add that while YouTube is very quick to ban channels like Leafy or even Monkey Jones, without any real reason, in the case of Monkey Jones without any reason whatsoever, it still takes them a very long time to get rid of channels like the one channel that I won't mention, but it was pretty much just a guy torturing and killing cats, and YouTube knew that this channel existed, but they just refused to get rid of it for, I believe, almost a year. Which then brings up the question as to why more edgy channels are banned so quickly, but channels like that one that literally killed cats on camera, which is illegal, I'm pretty sure, those, it takes a shit ton of time for YouTube to even consider really getting rid of them.
After Leafy got terminated, quite a few relevant figures in the community jumped to defend him. For example, Scarce tweeted out, "Even if you weren't a fan of his videos, Leafy's termination is very concerning. Leafy being terminated now means any of us could be next." FaZe Banks also echoed this sentiment on his podcast.
The pro-censorship stance is incredibly whack. What these people fail to really understand is that the goalpost will continue to be moved. The goalpost will be moved.
And listen, I respect both Scarce and FaZe Banks as creators, but I think they're either choosing to ignore facts or they've never even read the harassment policy at all. YouTube updated their harassment policy long before Leafy ever came back to YouTube. An official statement from 2019 says, and I quote, "Harassment sometimes takes the shape of a pattern of repeated behavior across multiple videos or comments, even if any individual video doesn't cross our policy line." And they list the following set of consequences for repeated harassment: getting suspended from the partnership program, removing content from a channel, issuing strikes, or terminating a channel altogether. So you see, the goalposts didn't move a single inch. Unfortunately, YouTube is no longer what it was several years ago.
Okay, so the goalpost might have not been moved, but I still don't think that Leafy broke any community guidelines. And I have this with a lot of channels that are being punished by YouTube in some way, where I look at them and I think to myself, well, they're not doing anything wrong, really. Like, take for example the channel Pegasus, right? Pretty much every single one of his videos get demonetized, even though he literally doesn't swear at all. He tries to even avoid words like violence because he thinks he might get demonetized for saying that. He got demonetized because his Roblox gameplay was deemed too violent, and recently he got a email from YouTube basically saying, "Hey, we're not gonna recommend your videos anymore to anyone who isn't subscribed to you. Have fun watching your channel slowly die." Even though this guy literally breaks zero of the fucking YouTube guidelines.
We're way past that point. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with their harassment policy, but it's done. It's been sealed. It's cut in stone, clear as daylight. If you upset the ecosystem, you will face severe consequences. It's been the reality we've been living in since 2019.
Yeah man, these rules go for everyone, unless you're like Jake Paul or J Station. In that case, you make a lot of money for YouTube and you can do whatever the fuck you want.
On top of that, Leafy says himself that he did get a warning.
Did you have any strikes prior to your channel being terminated? Because I know you got some in the past, but like you complained to YouTube and they reversed them so that they made a mistake.
No, I had one, I think, warning, but I had no strikes besides that, so yeah, it was super random, dude.
How is it super random when you acknowledge that you got a warning before that, which you chose to ignore and even ramp up the thing they warned you about in the first place?
So I couldn't find exactly what YouTube warned Leafy for, but apparently the reason why they banned him is for harassment and inflammatory language. And I don't think Leafy is really guilty of either of those things, really. If you look at his newer videos, they were really just more critical than his older videos. Now it could be that YouTube removed Leafy for his older videos, to which I would say that's fucking bullshit to remove someone for older videos that they made like 4 years ago at that point. But also, like, what inflammatory language? I mean, I guess he said the N-word once in one video, but besides that, I don't know. I guess maybe the Pokimane stuff was harassment. I mean, the Pokimane videos are pretty much the exact same as the H3H3 content nuke series that they're based on, which is just the first one is a critical video of Pokimane, then the next 3 are him reacting to what happened after he uploaded the first video, and then he made like 5 other videos that were unrelated but had Pokimane in the title and the thumbnail. Which that's the one thing that I will say that Leafy is guilty of is clickbaiting, which is not allowed. But besides that...
Now, there's the argument that he only used Pokimane in the thumbnails, but then his videos were talking about something completely different. And that's just bogus, because not only does it break the clickbait rule, but thumbnails are just as much subject to the harassment guidelines as any other part of the content. Furthermore, a thumbnail is only clicked 5 to 10% of the time it's being shown. So for every, let's say, 1 million views a video gets, there's roughly 12 million people who saw it but never clicked on it. If the picture in the thumbnail is considered harassment, it's completely irrelevant what the content is. So that's 2 rules you broke with 1 stone, and that argument falls.
I mean, yeah, you can't harass someone in the thumbnail, but none of the thumbnails of Leafy were really harassing Pokimane in any way. It was just pictures of her standing in front of like a nuke or a black hole, or I don't really remember, but I think one of them was like a shopping aisle or something, or just her sitting in her chair. None of them were made to make Pokimane look ugly or stupid, or called her ugly or stupid. They were all just thumbnails with pictures of her in it. Now, they were clickbait, I'll give you that, but besides that, they're not harassment. You know what thumbnail I think is harassment though? The thumbnail of this video. As you can see, Andrei on purpose drew a very exaggerated ugly picture of Leafy for the thumbnail. Now, someone said in the comments that he's doing this because Leafy called his art bad, but an ugly drawing isn't automatically a bad one. What is funny though is he puts, probably for the same reason, he puts these bad animation things throughout his video when someone else is talking, which that's pretty funny. But still, I would like to argue that this video of Andrei falls more under the thumbnail harassing rule than any of Leafy's videos on Pokimane did.
As for the argument that Leafy didn't see this coming, that's just a flat-out lie. For one, he can be directly quoted in saying he will not stop until he gets banned.
I'm assuming at this point some people are wondering when am I gonna stop. If I had to be honest, most likely when I get banned, or just complete utter burnout. When I have a cow that just keeps producing milk, I'm just gonna keep milking it until the milk dries up, and the cow has been milked to this point of complete utter exhaustion.
Well, I mean, someone saying that they won't stop making YouTube videos until they either get banned or don't want to make videos anymore isn't the same as someone saying, oh, fucking ban me, I dare you.
And 2, any creator who makes even slightly edgy content knows they have to walk a very thin line across a legitimate minefield. Choosing to ignore that is 100% on you.
I mean, it was edgy for sure, but it was nowhere near as edgy as his older content or other people that are still on the platform right now.
People saying, oh, Leafy, come back. I would love to see Leafy come back and try to exist in the landscape today. I'd love to see him succeed in today's climate.
Leafy could have well survived the climate, but he made one giant mistake by letting his ego get in the way and losing grip on his priorities. By taunting H3H3 with this clip over and over again, he placed himself in this cycle of trying to prove Ethan wrong and make him look stupid. But by pushing the boundary a little more each time and seeing how he was getting away with it, he was pretty much like a junkie looking for the next fix, always chasing the dragon. So instead of making Ethan look stupid, it just backfired on himself. He literally set himself up to be terminated.
I mean, yeah, I guess those clips kind of daunted Ethan a bit, but I don't think that really has anything to do with Leafy getting banned. Unless Ethan has any power within YouTube, which if he does have actual power to get people banned on YouTube, then that's scary as fuck, because he's a real piece of shit. Also, I personally never saw it as him trying to prove himself. I guess that could be the reason why he put those at the end of the video. I thought he just had like the same joke at every end of the video. I used to do that as well with my older videos, I guess. I used to have like the Moscow music playing over like a different picture of a communist leader. I did it like, I believe 10 times before I realized that it really wasn't that funny. Anyway.
And I have to point out what a waste it is. If anything, it's just sad that a channel of this size has just gone to waste. And what's even more sad, in my opinion, is how Leafy is acting like he doesn't care. Flexing with the $4 million he supposedly made, but meanwhile he cut off the connection to his own audience and sabotaged a large source of his income by sheer vanity and frustration. Leafy fans will say, he doesn't care, bro, he tricked the system. He got his bag and left on his own terms. And that's probably the biggest lie he managed to sell to those looking up to him. For someone who keeps yapping about the stock market and how financially savvy he is, I don't buy for a second that he's just okay with losing direct access to 5 million people to which he could just churn his minimal effort content on a daily basis in order to stay at the top of their consciousness and continue to make bank selling his merch. I think not Leafy the public persona, but Calvin Vale, the grown-ass man behind it, I think he knows very well that it could have gone on for a lot longer, and he could have made a hell of a lot more than $4 million. And at the end of the day, it's just a whole lot of wasted potential.
Yeah, so I went on Leafy's Twitter, which is like his main form of communicating with his fans nowadays, and he never once mentioned at all that he doesn't care that he was banned. If anything, I just see him constantly, in the beginning, when he was just banned, I see him constantly saying things like how he wants to be unbanned and trying to get himself in contact with YouTube and people that could help him possibly get his channel back. I mean, I guess after a couple of weeks he started making jokes about how YouTube was racist because it wouldn't allow him back on the platform or something. And after that, he's just constantly trying to find new platforms for him to exist on. Like first it was Twitch, then he got banned on Twitch, and now he's on TikTok and Storyfire. If anything, what Leafy's Twitter is showing is that he cares quite a fucking bit about being banned. Now, I haven't seen any of his live streams on Twitch, mainly because he's now banned and I didn't even know he had a Twitch at the time. But maybe he said something there about not giving a shit. But for me, from what I saw on his Twitter, it's very clear that he does care about losing his YouTube channel.
Now, as far as people's reaction goes, here's something else that I don't understand. When Jake Paul was making content for kids that clearly broke a lot of guidelines, everybody riled up to condemn his actions. Nerd City made an entire video based on the specific idea that by virtue of toxic content like the one Jake Paul was making, regulators might crack down on YouTube and all of us would have to suffer the consequences. Well, guess what? It wasn't long before COPPA happened as a result of that. With Leafy, we're looking at the exact same situation. A YouTuber who made toxic content intentionally dancing too close to the line, essentially taunting outside forces to come and crack down on the entire platform. How come the same people who were condemning Jake Paul never said a word against Leafy's antics, some even defending him? It's the same situation, just in a different genre.
Now, while I think that Leafy didn't break any community guidelines and wasn't that toxic, I cannot deny that he was still probably more edgy and more toxic than most creators on the platform. There are definitely some creators more edgy than he is, but he was definitely one of the most edgiest. Now, why I think that people cared more about Jake Paul than Leafy is because, well, people actually like Leafy, my dude. I think people actually liked Leafy and thought that he was kind of funny, and people just fucking hate Jake Paul. I think it just boils down to that. I think that's the only real reason why people cared more about the Jake Paul thing than the Leafy thing.
Commentary, in my opinion, doesn't mean you can just attack someone to get views. I think valuable commentary should be based as much as possible on objective analysis, verified facts, and a sort of sportsmanship that might allow you to eventually shake hands with the person you're criticizing if you ever met them. And I think it's pretty ignorant to think YouTube wants to ban free speech, by the way. Realistically, I think they're just trying to keep the conversation civil. In fact, this is what Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube, actually said herself.
The policy has to be written in such a way that creators can comment on each other and criticize each other.
100%.
And so the question is, how do you draw the difference between being part of this free speech and open ideas and then like where do you draw that line? Where do they cross the line? That it's no longer just about ideas, but they're criticizing them as a person. And so that's what we're in the process of doing.
I've been pretty vocal against YouTube whenever I've seen them mess up, but when the rules are so spelled out and clear-cut, I feel like those who are defending Leafy are just acting on emotion, when in fact, all evidence points against him.
Well, I think Leafy's newer content, not his older content, did both. I think they both had valuable criticism and kind of made fun of the person behind the video. Especially with like his Pokimane video. If you look at that, he delivered valuable, good criticism of Pokimane's content, and then also kind of made fun of her a little bit. But he didn't go too far. He didn't go like over the line where I would say, okay, makes sense that he would get like banned for this. He just said like, oh, she is not very funny, she isn't very talented or interesting. If you can't say that, it's just giving your opinion about someone else. And then he said like, oh, and I don't think she's very attractive. Which he didn't say that like, oh, she's fucking ugly, she's fucking disgusting, look at her nose or some shit like that. He just said like, yeah, she isn't very attractive. And then moved on.
When faced with the argument that YouTube is a private company that can do whatever they want, I've seen people respond in a way that to me doesn't make much sense. People are acting like if, say, Uber were to ban some of its drivers based on their religion or their political beliefs. But that's just not the case at all. It's more like Uber banning drivers who don't abide by traffic codes. If someone chooses to drive the wrong way just to raise chaos, Uber 100% has the right to ban that person from using their app. And YouTube's position on this has been very consistent in the past few years. Whether we look at iDubbbz's Content Cop on Leafy or Gokunaru's video on H3H3, and now with Leafy getting banned, it's crystal clear that while they're not stifling commentary, they've drawn a clear line between attacking a person versus combating ideas and criticizing a creator's actions. From that point of view, iDubbbz's video on Leafy does lean pretty heavily on personal attacks. Gokunaru's video brings up a lot of great points about H3H3, but then he goes around and simulates a frickin' execution scene at the end of it.
Yeah. And it was fucking hilarious.
And by the way, some of Leafy's criticism in the video that he made about me was very much valid. In the video he chose to criticize, I was obnoxious and overconfident. But the thing is, he intentionally picked a video that I had made over 2 years ago when I was dealing with a sudden giant wave of attention that quite frankly I wasn't equipped to properly handle. Looking back on that period of time, there's parts that are tough for me to watch, and it's something that I've talked about very openly before. So any legitimate criticism he had for me is invalidated by the amount of malice and envy he regurgitated in his video. I think commentary on YouTube is an important sort of cleansing mechanism that keeps creators in check. It's very healthy for the community to have these types of videos, but the moment attacking the person starts to weigh more than combating their ideas, you're entering a territory where you're just inviting YouTube to come in and put their foot down. And that's exactly what happened with Leafy.
I mean, yeah, but like, again, creators like Leafy and Gokunaru and old iDubbbz videos, well, they do rely a little bit, or quite a bit, on attacking the person, right? I think that still attacking the person, it didn't even go over the line, if you ask me, but also played second to criticizing the content. And if you can't attack the person at all, then you're gonna end up with commentary channels like D'Angelo Wallace. Which, while his criticism is very good and very valid, his videos are fucking boring, in my opinion. They're like 40 minutes of just a guy sitting in front of a camera making the most basic bitch humor jokes you've ever heard. And it's just so boring. There's no other word for it.
Leafy. Now I also want to touch on the fact that after I made my last video on Pokimane, she came out with a response, and I think it's fair to acknowledge that it was a pretty reasonable video. For anybody interested in checking it out, I've linked it in the pinned comment of my last video. As you can see, the Leafy situation is pretty complex. There's so many variables to it that I could probably make maybe like 9 more videos on the topic, but my thoughts on his ban can basically be summed up this way. If he hadn't been actively trying to push YouTube's buttons and maliciously targeting people against all rules and guidelines, I would agree that he was wronged. Because regardless if you like someone or not, when someone gets unjustly censored or deplatformed, it's bad news for everybody. But in my opinion, this was not a case of censorship. It's just a case of someone falling on their own ass as a consequence of their own actions. But in any case, let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you agree, if you disagree in any way, especially for Leafy fans. I know you're probably gonna wanna leave dislikes, but I'm interested in hearing your actual thought.
Well, here I am, giving you my actual thoughts. I didn't leave you a dislike, by the way. Also, I'm not sure if I'm still like a Leafy fan, I guess. I mean, I still like his newer videos, but I wasn't as big of a fan as I used to be when I was like 12. Anyway, that's not important. Yeah, but so still, I don't think that Leafy really broke any community guidelines, besides the clickbait one. I tried something different, you guys. I tried a more respectful video this time. Hope this doesn't get a lot of people angry at me, because usually when I make a video about a bigger YouTuber, people immediately try to cancel me because I'm being quote-unquote rude. But yeah, this is where I'm ending the video. Like, subscribe, whatever. Bye.